So welcome to the Filmmakers
Thank you.
Podcast. Lovely to have you back again. Last time we spoke One Life and Slow Horses.
Yeah.
So you've just finished in LA shooting a show, and obviously we've got the Amateur, which is fantastic.
Mm.
How are you sort of doing with the reception of this? I mean,
It's early days, but last night was thrilling. Look, it's somebody who grew up wanting to direct movies suddenly finds themselves with a premiere in Leicester Square and the lineup that we had last night, and standing with these extraordinary people, Rami and Lawrence and Caitríona. It's
I feel like those are like the sort of linchpins of the dream of filmmaking is like there's the Leicester Square premieres, there's like the Cannes, they're the kind of things where it's like check yourself sort of moments.
They're pinch yourself moments, but it is about the cast as well, and the Amateur. There is no doubt, and if we want to talk in the broad, we wrapped the main shoot of the Amateur offshore from Istanbul on a trawler, filming one of those sequences you've seen. In fact, at the moment he's arriving into Russia.
Yes.
And we wrapped around midday, and I was in a rush, and I had to get to Istanbul airport and fly to Prague for the Czech premiere of One Life, which was presented by the Czech president that night. That was a pinch yourself day.
Yeah.
I particularly remember the time in the lounge in Istanbul airport, and for some reason they had a problem with their catering. So all they were serving was baklava and champagne. It's just a perfect day.
High on sugar and
yeah. I had a great time.
It's the globe-trotting thing that's so exciting, I suppose, as well. I mean, especially for this film. I mean, what was it like shooting? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about the sort of jumping on planes, but what was it like, getting your head around, just being uprooted and thrown into different countries for so many different? I mean, it's a big thing to take on, isn't it?
It is. It's part of the challenge, because obviously you take your core crew with you, but you then pick up crew in each country as you go. And in fact, in each city, you're picking up new local crew. You don't want to be traveling with the entire train. It's about having the good plans. It's about knowing exactly where you're going to hit the ground, what your intent is in any given place, having good people locally to make sure you've got all the permissions and the access that you're going to need.
Yeah, fixers very important.
Fixers are hugely important, and everything works differently, not just country to country, but city to city. And we were very well served and looked after. In fact, Paris and Istanbul showed themselves to be very film-friendly places.
I mean, Istanbul's like stunning.
Yeah, and I met with a Turkish podcaster yesterday who thanked us for not having shot Istanbul in golden light, because they're so used to suddenly, the helicopter shot over the Bosphorus and a golden sunset and
the market, obviously. Yeah.
And the market. Yeah. Which obviously is a great location, and Bond did it gloriously, but we wanted something more earthed and backstreet.
So in terms of piecing together your crew, was it sort of cinematographer that you carted around, which, and then I guess a lot of the other crew members you're sort of picking up in local hires?
You keep the heads of department with you. So cinematographer and designer and makeup and costume are consistent throughout sound. And then you pick up their juniors as you go. You keep the key operator for camera, but you pick up local assistant cameras and focus pullers and the like.
What were some of the differences in terms of the actual filming structure? Say France, Istanbul, you're shooting sort of very internationally. Were there any challenges in certain areas or different ways that the sort of industry runs that you had to sort of get your head around?
There are different ways the industry runs. I mean, obviously in mainland Europe, you've got the 38-hour week, which provides a challenge to film units. It means that you end up rotating your crew because crew won't do British hours. It's different to what I've just been doing in the States, for example, where you're doing 13-hour days. And here we try and stick to 10, maybe push to 11 or 12. And yes, there are different divides between who picks up which equipment and how many people are required to any one department. The principles are the same. And obviously you as the director, the first AD, the cinematographer, tend to be the drivers of the mechanics of the shoot.
Definitely. So let's talk about getting this off the ground, like how it sort of came to you. Because, I mean, no one can accuse you of doing the same kinds of projects. I mean, you've got such an eclectic range of things that you've directed and you've been part of. So how did this sort of land on your desk or get developed?
Well, I have worked at zigzagging through my TV career to avoid being pigeonholed, and I think that's worked. Obviously, the flip side of that argument is nobody knows what you do. You know, what's your brand?
Everything.
Well, you'd like to say that. I tell stories, I get performances. But Slow Horses was obviously the breakthrough most recently. That happened to land in the world of espionage. So in the way that producers think, they go, who does spies? Who does good tension? And this script came towards me. And what I loved about it is that there is the action, there is the classic espionage world. You can feel its roots deep into the past of the espionage genre, the paranoid thrillers of the 70s and 80s. But it has that fantastically fresh premise, the geek, the unexpected hero.
So just going into the sort of the American iconography as well, because British director, what's that like to go over there? And because I mean, you're working with some amazing American actors. You've got the sort of the CIA sort of tropes and American work culture to sort of absorb. Like, what was it sort of getting stuck into those kind of things and making them feel authentic?
Well, just to remind you that it was all shot here. We didn't film in the States.
Okay, but American actors.
Yes. Well, you make, I think partly we're imbued with it, first of all. So there's a lot of it that is familiar to us.
Yeah, through watching
and absorbing that. And we have very good research teams, and the design department will be very clued into what it is we need to deliver. We've seen enough of the interior of Langley to know what that should look like. But Langley is an example. So building the CIA headquarters, the exterior was a car park at the old Heinz headquarters in Hayes.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of H's there. The reception is the Queen Elizabeth Hall on the South Bank. Mm-hmm. Here's the lobby. The canteen is St. Anthony's College, Oxford. Upstairs and the basement for Hello was all filmed at Aldermaston, which is the UK's atomic headquarters until the 90s, until we disbanded that. So that same architecture, and we found those different locations, all locations, to build together that world.
That feels very authentic, I suppose.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the cast. I mean, was this easy to attach? You know, Rami and Lawrence and Caitríona.
Rami was there before I came on board.
Okay, well, that helps things move
absolutely,
along.
Because then you create that gravitational pull at the heart of the project, and once you know, then you've got the studio backing, you've got Rami attached, you've got the project. We then went out to various people, and those people were our first choices, whether it was Rachel, Caitríona, or Lawrence Holt, and we got first choices, and that was exciting. Sometimes they require a demanding call for all the right reasons. They want to make sure that what they've taken from the pages is what you've taken from the pages, and you're heading in the same direction. Slow Horses did me no harm, certainly, that we'd recently proven ourselves in the genre.
I suppose that's it. It's for an actor, it's like, am I going to be in good, safe hands here, that my acting is going to be taken, well, and it's going to be sort of happy.
Yeah, it's certainly. And apparently Rami and Lawrence had met a couple of times. They both overlap in their interest in New York theatre, London theatre scene. So they talked about trying to find something they could do together. And I really enjoy the scenes where those two people sit in a car or at a bar.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about rehearsal. I mean, this is obviously quite a thrillery action film. What's your process with talking through characters with the actors and initial conversations, I guess, we're covering again? Yeah,
but I will spend a lot of time in a room with the script at a tabletop, with Rami, for example, first of all, going right through his arc, really turning the pages. What is his temperature? Where's his emotion? Where's his threat in every scene? So we have a real map of the whole journey that gives us a shorthand on set. And gradually, where I can, and it isn't always possible with actors flying in for short periods, we'll then bring in people with him to join him for those scenes. And we did that even, for instance, with Michael Stuhlbarg for the final scene. That we were in Marseille by then when Michael joined us, but we then spent a Saturday on those scenes. First with Michael, because we needed to bring him into our tone, and he had a lot of questions about his backstory. In fact, he sent me an email with 93 questions about his character, because that's the way he works, right down to what's my nationality? Did I have siblings? Have I killed people? How many people? What military was I part of? Do I have money? How much money? Where do I consider home?
I mean, that's what you actually want from an actor is someone that like wants to know so much, and then you get thinking about it as well as a director, and it's like this sort of back and forward where you delve into the minutiae of the characters,
and you want that done beforehand because those are questions you don't want to have to answer on set. You want that to have been part of the process for them to have absorbed, put to one side, and then just becomes behind the frontage of their performance.
Because that's one thing that this has is all of the parts. Some of them, I mean, Rami's throughout the most of the film, but a lot of the characters come in and they do a very short, intensive period.
Yes.
Like Caitríona's character is like a very big arc that happens in a very intense sort of period of time. I mean, how do you sort of hit the ground running with those kind of moments that have to hit the audience, but then also give you enough time to get into their character?
Well, a lot of that's in the script, obviously. But you're right, because it was a road trip for the production. We were constantly moving through characters, killing characters, finding new characters. You have to protect performance time for them. And it's very easy in production for all your attention to go to the logistically challenging sequences. The big air-to-boat or boat-to-boat sequences, for example, the car chases, because they take production time. You have to ring-fence space for the performance moments.
Yeah, and I suppose you don't have much time to actually do rehearsal on, before shooting, except for the sort of stunt side on this level of production.
You really don't. And we did have to move fast. It is a very ambitious film for our budget and schedule. It may look huge. It wasn't as huge as it looked. And you've got the first AD whose job, of course, is to enable the film, but also to watch the clock.
Yeah.
And any time that you're going, can we just run that one more time? They're sighing loudly in the corner because you're not shooting.
Yeah.
And until you're shooting, you're not achieving.
So let's sort of talk a little bit about tone and the visual look of the film and how you decided to set that part apart, to make it give its own sort of unique feel to this.
Yeah. Well, let's talk tone first of all, because I think the tone is everything. And I mean tone way beyond the look.
Yeah.
We wanted it rooted. We wanted it to feel genuine. And this took place in a contemporary and actual 2025. Then you want to give it that little Hollywood lift. So we talk constantly about rootedness and that everything felt plausible. The tech is all real. It's all real or very nearly real. In fact, some of the things we were told by our experts would curl your toes to hear what was actually achievable.
It's sort of sobering, isn't it? When you hear about what's like technologically doable now, it's kind of quite scary.
Really,
as a sort of
really,
civilian,
without a doubt. Yeah, and you don't want to go there. The key thing for me was to have the humor and the emotion alongside the jeopardy. That when you created these fantastic car chases or a foot chase, you cared about who was running and who was being pursued, which isn't always the case for me in action movies. Sometimes it's okay, it's a great piece of visual drama, but are you emotionally invested? In terms of the look, I really did want to harness a little bit of our ancestors, of our precedents, of Condor, of Parallax View, of All the President's Men. To some extent, we're aware as well of 90s movies like Enemy of the State.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Classic.
Which stands up incredibly well. Tony Scott had a way of doing pace and he had a way of doing tech that still feels remarkably fresh.
And also sort of camera movements and lens choices that don't sort of draw you out of the story but engage you into the stunts.
Which we tried to do. So we kept, and the camera in the early part of the film is quite steady and respectful of the formality and the relative calm of Langley. And then when you start getting on mission training and then mission with Hella, it goes handheld. It becomes more kinetic. And it's very much throughout on his shoulder. Whether you're walking in with the documents that he uses to blackmail his bosses, you're following those documents, you're walking through the office with him. When you're running down the street, you're with him. You're never with the pursuer.
No, because it is very much his journey, and it does sort of feel like that, because other people sort of come in and they disappear or get killed off, as we said earlier. But it is very much his kind of story. So what was the hardest bit about the stunts in this? Because it's obviously pretty ambitious.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the thinking into the pool sequence was huge. The planning for that was considerable, and there was a lot to get wrong very expensively if it went wrong.
I'm glad you did that. I was thinking, they're not going to do this. They're not,
what?
They're not going to blow it up. I mean, because as an audience member, obviously you don't want to kill someone, but you also, I was just like, this would be so exciting to see that pool fully.
And to just mention again that it is inspired by something from the original novel, in which there is a giant aquarium in a restaurant in Prague with people swimming inside it that cracks and is part of the hero's escape. So we've harnessed something from there. Along the way, a little film called Mission Impossible might have done a version of that, but it's true to the amateur, and we've tried to take it back and reinvent it and re-own it. Planning that, shooting on location, using VFX, but also building a chunk of it in the studio was a considerable undertaking. The most expensive shot in the film. So,
was there anything from a sort of character point that you really needed to put some thought into, or maybe changed from how it was in the script once you sort of really got into those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, obviously, it's very difficult to set up Sarah adequately. Rachel Brosnahan's character has very little screen time, certainly at the outset.
Yeah.
And yet that's key to giving Hella his cause, to feel his loss, to understand the emotion that drives him. So the way we talked about having her come back in those flashbacks, in those ghosting moments, and how delicately we handled those, and we really had to play with that in the script, play with that in the production to make sure we were in the right sort of world. I promised Rachel there would be no golden light, there would be no sort of ring of remembrance around.
Oh yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, flashbacks, especially when you've got to like cover something, well, not flashbacks, but when you've got to cover someone that is so important. And then I suppose that mechanic of showing her after she'd died, that was like really important for it not being, the flashback mechanic.
And what we did was these little moments, for example, in the Parisian hotel room, which there's a scene I cooked up where there's a familiar ritual where she turns back the bed and puts the water glasses and the lights on. And I like that because it felt like an idea you could portray without dialogue. It felt like something a couple might do. And then, of course, she's not there. So then you feel the immediate pathos.
Yeah. And it also, it's refreshing to not have like the hands through the hair and the staring through the glossy glass sort of moments, because it doesn't actually, there's nothing personal about that. It's a sort of, a generic.
And there's nothing
moment.
Day to day about it.
Yeah. No, I thought that was one of the most interesting mechanics, actually, was the way that was handled when you put the thought into those bits.
Yeah.
Can you briefly talk about the film you were shooting or TV show you were shooting in LA, just to finish up?
I can tell you it's called Lanterns. It's written by Chris Mundy, who wrote Ozarks and The Last of the True Detectives, and is no slouch at all.
Wow.
It is co-produced between Warner's, HBO Max and DC. It is a take on Green Lantern out of the DC universe, starring Kyle Chandler, Aaron Pierre, and Kelly MacDonald. And I've directed the first 2 episodes. It's a really, again, rooted buddy cop kind of approach to the Green Lantern myth that obviously then dips its toe into the supernatural.
Sounds amazing. Just to wrap up, so basically coming to the end, anything you learnt particularly from shooting the amateur, like maybe one lesson that you've taken forward?
I'm looking into the faces of the actors. I'm not sure there's one lesson. I mean, filmmaking is frigging hard work. It's also enormously thrilling and fun. You just got to put in the prep all the way. And we did, and it delivered. I'd do even more next time.
Great advice. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Nice to have you again.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Good to see you.